Okay? Eusebius, in his writings on church history, stresses the interdependence of church and state, often interweaving accounts and political affairs of the state with issues that related to ecclesial matters. The emperors had converted to Christianity, and in doing so, it obligated them to offer the church protection and support, even to the point of convening synods to quell internal dissent and theological heresy. So, it's not enough to be a partner with the emperor. It's not enough. But now, you will make him do what you want him to do. You will have him fight your battles. And you will make him convene council or meetings to once and for all solve the problems that you have with other Christians. Now, I hope you're following this very carefully. The church was not just the church by itself. It did not represent all Christians. Remember, we have this very dangerous sect called the Gnostics are out there. Now, while this is going on, we have a couple of 100 miles to the east, from Edessa onwards, we have the Manichaeans. Extremely powerful. And they're catching on very quickly. In fact, they did catch on to somebody and bit his rump in the back and did a pretty good job, and that was Augustine. He was a Manichaean himself for 10 years. And he decided to break loose from that. So they had spread out into northern Africa, and we will learn later on that these people would have spread into Europe, and they weren't stopped until well into the Middle Ages. They were not stopped at all. Now, what I want to get back to is quelling this theological dissent. Notice the words that we use, dissent. Okay? It's something that we use nowadays when we look at the politics. Can't help it, but I have to keep drawing parallels for you so that you begin to understand. So, reading, if I tell anybody I'm teaching patristics, it's like they're ready to gag on their finger or something. Like, oh, gross. It's so boring. But really, if you start looking at it from your perspective, what you're living through, you'll see some parallels. Dissent is what we also get in the media right now. Okay, we're calling certain individuals that do not agree with us insurgents. They don't agree with us. Well, let's label them insurgents. We're calling them the axis of evil. Okay? George Bush declares nations, axis of evil. Written by some punk. Some guy that decided to write for him. And just like that, went unopposed completely by all the political scientists, these geniuses that are out in every major university. No one ever uttered a word. By politicians, by church groups, by synagogues, by mosques, by anyone. No one even challenged his definition. And the question, of course, comes back to you, is that when we hear something like this, how much more would you continue to bend your neck? How much more? Well, they were doing this back in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th centuries. People were being labeled. Your neighbor was being labeled. So we have dissent in the church, theological dissent. My God, what a terrible thing, terrible crime. And yet, 200-300 years before that, people were debating these issues on the streets, in the marketplace, normally. So, do you believe Christ is a man, or do you think he's just a spirit? Well, I don't know, I think he's like this or that. It's normal. But dare open your mouth in the 4th and 5th century and see what happens to you. Have that kind of conversation. That's end of discussion. We did it in the church, it's over. You do not talk about that sort of thing. And by the way, if you speak like that, you're a heretic. Okay, so the labeling is coming back. Okay? You don't really want to own that label, but that's what's happening. When they call you a heretic, then you are now a heretic. And people spend a lot of energy going back and forth, fighting the charges of heresy. poor Constantine was just flipping between these people. It's like, okay, he's a heretic. No, he's not a heretic. Okay, no, you're a heretic. No, okay, let's go back and forth. That's what they were doing. So reading the stuff, honestly, it's like an Abbott Costello comedy. It really is. Because you're trying to think of Constantine as a real serious man. You think of these bishops as being very serious, religious, individuals. And yet, the politics that's going on, it makes our question here in Parliament looks like something that's very special. All right, as a ruler empowered from above, Constantine viewed himself as a protector of the church. He labored on its behalf, making evident his intention to make Christianity the preferred religion of the empire. In his mind, the bishops were commissioned to care for the inner life of the church, while he cared for the external affairs. It was his verdict that if the church was to be the greatest assistance of the empire, it must be united. Its policies, activities, teachings, and liturgy were being influenced more by political necessity than by the Gospels.